This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living. Now, let's join Jeff already in the studio.
Hello and welcome. This is Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living. Now, today we are again so privileged to have a very special guest with us in the studio. She is my longest standing friend. I've known her since I was 4 years old in kindergarten. She has played a huge role in my own life and development, and even the business that I have today as a coach. She is Barbara Valentine Gustafson. She's the founder of Discover Next Step. She's an executive coach, and she is the author of this brand new book, Permission to Be Bold. This is a book on loving yourself, living fully, and making your mark on the world. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us again for today's show.
Jeff, I'm really enjoying the conversation. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, for those of you, in case you're just tuning in and you don't know, this is part 2 of the conversation we're having with Barbara. Now, if you missed the first part, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to it. Barbara has shared with us a whole lot about her journey from being very reserved, being very shy, not giving herself permission to be bold in a lot of ways that have changed her life, and really as a result are now changing a lot of other people's lives. And last time what we looked at was primarily her story and where she had come from, where she's gotten to now, some of that journey. But on this part, what I want to do is focus in on how she is now helping other people, as you and me, to give ourselves permission to be bold. So, Barbara, what I'd like to do is just jump right in. And because you're a coach, you're an executive coach, you're a speaker, you're an author, and you come across a lot of people. And as we mentioned on the last show, it's very, very frequent that we find people and we just know that they've got something that they're going to be so fulfilled when they unleash and get out there in the world, and it's going to make a difference in other people's lives. But there are just hindrances. So many people, very often, they live their entire lives. You and I have seen this, and it's tragic, and they just never have done what they could have done, what they would have loved doing, and what would have impacted others. So I'd like, if I can ask you to talk to us for a few minutes about what are some of those hindrances that you commonly see in people? What do those look like? And how do you help move them past those hindrances, get them unstuck? Because we all know that stuck stinks no matter what level you're at. How do you get people unstuck and help them move forward on their journey of giving themselves permission to be bold and becoming really who they're meant to be?
Yeah, and so I shared a couple of hindrances in the previous segments, and I'll touch on this a little bit more and then move into some more. When I'm working with people, sometimes I'm working with those who have the same personality as I do. Introvert, they're excited about their growth and their journey, but when they actually start taking the steps, they're like, whoa, this is terrifying. and so sometimes we get caught into the belief that we have to have a certain personality or a trait to step boldly, and that just is not true. No matter how many times we've heard it or seen it, from views of the world, there's boldness inside all of us. And so when I'm helping someone really take steps through that, it's really about getting to know yourself. And there's that quote, and Jeff, remind me, you probably know thyself. I can't remember if it's Plato or Socrates, one of the greats said it, that know themselves. Who was that?
You know what? I know the quote very well, but I can't tell you who it was that originally said it either.
It's 2 words, know thyself. But I tell you, those are 2 of the most empowering words, but also difficult to do just because it's a process of, we're layers And it's a process of digging. It's like mining for the gold in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And to get to know ourselves, it's not just about finding out information, but it's using what we find to make our life work better and easier and to connect with others more. So for me and for my clients, it's really getting to know what our energy style is, when are we most productive, how do we best connect with other people, how do we recharge, what's our personality, our learning style. So there's just this plethora of, it's just like a treasure map. We can go on and discovering things about ourselves. And I feel that's really never ending. It's that idea of, there is unlimited potential. There's unlimited things about us. And what we see now is what we see now. We don't see it all. There's more, and the deeper we go, the more we uncover. So that's an area that I find that, the more people get to know themselves, and they align those with their goals and the strategic roadmap that we created together. And so that's a very important tool that we work on together. Another part of this is, and I find one of the hindrances, there might be someone who their business is exploding, yet something in life has happened. They're with their health or a loved one. They're just in a season where they're not able to give anything else. And they've gone into this survival mode. But again, they have this amazing opportunity. So really examining and giving themselves permission to know where to pull back, but also know where to move forward. And how can you make this season of growth more doable for you so that you can still thrive, even though all this is happening? It doesn't mean that, all of a sudden everything's glamorous, but it means that you're not going to give up on you just because this is happening. Yes, it's going to look very different. And the best example I can give, and I write the story in the book, I love sharing other people's stories because that's where I learned most from. But a dear friend named Karen, her coaching business was exploding and super excited. Her husband was injured in the line of, she was on the police force, and so life became very different for her family. Became caretaker, and so she had a choice to either just completely put everything on hold or to, rewrite the script. How am I going to live through this? And so I love how she approached this. You think of, we're on our journey, our family's on the journey, but she calls it her crooked journey. So she realizes there's never going to be days that are the same. It's all going to be different. And so she has determined to enjoy that crooked journey, no matter the twists and turns that take. And she is growing, and she's doing what she needs to do as a wife. And so just her making a choice to have that perspective where she could have had a completely different, outcome, could have chosen to completely give up on her dream, which she wasn't called to do. But I think really examining the season that you're in, some are a little bit longer, but getting clear on what the mission is for that season. And know that sometimes we live in multiple seasons. There's things that are happening on the home front and business. Does that make sense to you when I kind of expand it like that, Jeff?
Yeah, that's extremely helpful. And as you were explaining that, it just came to me that some of the most influential people in the world that we most respect are ones who gained that influence out of the difficult seasons, out of the challenges. I think of Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Malala, who was shot and left for dead, and now the next year was Time magazine's cover for the 100 most influential people in the world. Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Maya Angelou. So many people have gained their deepest voice and their greatest influence through those seasons that they never would have wanted, but yet they somehow enhanced and expanded what was already there, and they became something that may have never otherwise been possible, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And one of the chapters, I think it was chapter 6, Grow Slow, in my book, I did a little bit of research on trees, and there's a poem in there about the growth of the growth of trees when it goes through storms and stuff like that. So I took it a little bit further just to see if that was true. And University of Arizona, back in the early 2000s, they did this experiment. It's called biosphere. You can look it up. There's some articles on it. So what they did, they created this like giant glass bubble of 3 or 4 acres, and they created this whole ecosystem that was self-sustaining. I mean, there was food, there was animals, and it was pretty cool. And the trees were just gorgeous, and they grew very luscious. But what happened was, after a couple of years, a lot of the trees that were straight and tall, they fell over. And they were like, why is that happening? It just seems to be kind of a reoccurring thing. But what they found was, when they went into further, was there was no wind or storm or anything like that. And when they started researching, they found that the presence of wind and stuff like that, it helps the trees be more flexible and dense. So what it does inside, it actually creates a stress wood that makes the tree stronger, and it helps the roots grow deeper. So they're able to withstand that. But what was happening, because they didn't have that wind, when they were getting so heavy up top, they just fell right over. And that just really struck a chord with me, because I realized, we have the choice, not of our circumstances a lot, but we have the choice on if we'll allow it to help us become more resilient, more flexible, and we can gain a lot of growth through those challenging times. In fact, often come out stronger. Isn't that a cool fact about the tree?
Well, Barbara, I love that you mentioned trees and how they're strengthened through the storms. One of my favorite trees are the giant sequoias, which I've had the privilege to see out in California. And, in doing some research on them, I found out that the little seed pods, they're very, very small seed pods, and they have this leathery substance, and the seeds can't be released unless a forest fire comes along and burns off that leathery exterior. And then the fire also clears the ground so that the seed can get in touch with the soil and the nutrients it needs. And the fire clears out the underbrush that would block the light from the seed so that it can get light. So the challenges like the ones you've mentioned with the trees, subjecting them to the winds and which strengthen them, or if it's the fire that comes through, all of those things that seem to be negative things that we want to avoid so much in our lives are actually the things that create the greatest strength and resilience and growth. I just absolutely love that. And we had just a little bit of a technological snafu just a minute ago, but I wanted to tell you that, Chuck, you had mentioned the quote, know thyself, in the first part of which you responded, and that was Socrates, actually. But I wanted to follow up, too, in what you had mentioned, the first on knowing yourself and not having to have a particular personality. And I just wanted to say that I'm so relieved that I don't have to be Tony Robbins in order to have an impact on somebody, because I'm never going to have that chiseled of a jaw in my life, I don't think. So that's a relief to know that I can figure out who I am and what I'm good at and put it to use and make a difference without having to live up to the image of someone else.
Yeah, and that's an important thing. When I realized that I didn't have to be anybody but me, it's a huge relief. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how much pressure I had been putting on myself to try to be, someone who's energetic, charismatic. We all have charisma. It just looks differently for us. When we find what our own charisma is, that's our authentic self. And when we share that with people, that's a gift that we're